Eschenfelder, and welcome back to JakeSlips TV, the show where we talk about the world's problems and how to solve them. Please enjoy this week's episode.
This week we cover the issues of single-use plastics. We also interviewed professionals and dug up information to uncover the dangers of single-use plastics. Please enjoy this episode on JakeSlips TV, Environmental Justice Edition.
In this shot, we are researching any and all questions we ask the interviewees. This way, we can have as much information as possible and back up any conclusions made at the end of the episode. Sophia Cashman works on the interviewee questions, while Shay Bosnick searches why and how single-use plastic is a problem at all. Hello, this is Jacob Eschenfelder from JakeSlips TV with our first interviewee, Bethany Schmidt, a teacher from SAMI.
Hi.
Oh.
Silent
jinx.
timing. Hi, Jacob. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Today we're going to ask you 3 questions that we're going to ask all of our interviewees that are professionals in the realm of,
Science and teaching?
yeah.
Sweet.
These questions will be, number 1, what is the most dangerous effect of single-use plastics? Number 2, what effect could come back and bite us and how? And number 3, what could we use alternatively to single-use plastics?
Excellent.
All right.
Want me just to dive in
Yeah, on number 1.
on number 1? All right. I think that single-use plastics are kind of like a danger trifecta. First of all, they're a byproduct of our fossil fuel industry, and by continuing to use them and support them, we are continuing to use and support the economics of fossil fuels. And we could be leading to greater and greater climate change. So that's a major issue. Also, as the name implies, single use, you use them once and then you throw them away. And so many of them are going into the trash instead of into the recycling. And they are entering our waste stream, they end up in our landfills, they end up in our waterways, and eventually end up in the ocean. Which brings me to the third issue, is microplastics. As they start to degrade, they're not actually fully breaking down. They're actually just breaking into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. So they're not actually going away. And those small pieces of plastic, the microplastics, can lead to even scarier issues. Which I guess brings me right to question 2. So what I am afraid is going to come back and bite us, or is actively coming back to bite us right now, those microplastics can bioaccumulate in marine organisms, ending up in high quantities in a lot of the fish and things like that we like to eat. There's a good chance that if you eat fish, you are eating plastics. And not only does that have health risks in those organisms, it can have some major health risks for us as well. There is a plastic toxicity in which you can get very, very sick, and plastics have been known to also kind of mimic hormones and cause some hormone disruption. That's pretty scary. Oof, indeed. So yes.
All right. And finally, question number 3. What could we use alternatively to single-use plastics?
Yeah, so I've really been leaning towards reusable glass items that I can use kind of in a multi-purpose function. A lot of them are microwave safe and dishwasher safe and oven safe, so you can reheat leftovers, and a lot of them are also shatterproof, so you can take them to work without being super concerned that they're going to break along the way. I know that sometimes those aren't ideal for me when I ride my bike because they can get heavy. So then I try to use multi-use plastics, so much more heavy-duty plastics like Nalgene thickness that are BPA free, so you can still wash them in the dishwasher, but you can keep them for years and years and years and years, and just use them over and over instead of the single-use ones or like very few use ones. that you only, use for a year before they're kind of destroyed and you have to get rid of them.
Well, that was very informational. Thank you very much.
No problem. Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Science.
All right, on to our next interviewee. Hello, this is Jacob Eschenfelder of JakeSlips TV, here with our second interviewee, Melinda Shuttler, a teacher at SAMI and also the manager of SAMI and Point Defiance Zoo Relations. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to ask you 3 questions as I've asked the other interviewees.
Okay.
Number 1, what is the most dangerous effect of single-use plastics? Number 2, what effect could come back to bite us and how? Number 3, what could we use alternatively to single-use plastics? Question number 1.
All right, so what is the most dangerous effect of single-use plastics, correct?
Yes.
All right, so to me there are 2 major negative effects of single-use plastic. So one is the fact that plastic is a permanent material. It will never go away. So unlike organic materials, it will never biodegrade and go back into the earth. Plastic can only photodegrade, where when it's exposed to the light, it will break down into smaller and smaller pieces. So that means any single-use plastic that we use is going to stay on the earth forever. So when you go and you get takeout food and you get a plastic bag and a plastic fork and a plastic container, you might spend 20 minutes eating that food, but then all of those pieces of plastic are going to be on the planet for the rest of time. So a plastic fork that your parent or grandparent used in like the 50s or 60s or 70s, that is still on the earth today. So it will never ever go away. And not only is plastic a permanent material, but it's become so ingrained in our everyday lives. So because plastic has become so inexpensive to produce and inexpensive to use for companies, it's become super common in a lot of packaging, in a lot of products. And so you can use a lot of plastic in your everyday life without even trying to. You can make your best efforts to avoid plastic, but still end up using a lot of it because it's just the most commonly used packaging material that we have here in the United States. So we're creating this kind of cascading effect where we have this permanent material that we're using for very short periods of time, and then we're using more and more and more and more and more of it. So we're kind of just building up our use of these things that are never going to go away.
All right. That's spooky.
Yeah.
All right, question number 2. What effects could come back to bite us and how?
So a lot of the most dangerous things to us about plastic are the fact that it photodegrades, meaning it breaks down into these smaller and smaller pieces. So as plastic breaks down, what happens is, as plastic breaks down, what happens is it gets into smaller and smaller pieces, and then those become what we call microplastics. So they're these little tiny pieces, and then those can be ingested by animals, but also by us. So the vast majority of people, without intending to, have ingested plastic. So most people on Earth today have plastic inside their bodies just because the plastic is breaking down into small pieces and then we're ingesting it. And then what's also dangerous about that is that, especially in the ocean, when plastic breaks down, it acts as kind of a little sponge. So the chemical makeup of plastic is such that it attracts the toxins and other elements that are in the water, and they get absorbed into the plastic themselves, and they become kind of like a little poison pill. So not only are we ingesting all of that plastic, we're also ingesting all of the toxins that are getting absorbed into that plastic, which is an even worse effect.
Geez, all this is pretty creepy.
Yeah.
All right, final question. What could we use alternatively to single plastics?
So I think even though plastic has become really common in our everyday lives, there are a lot of things that we can do as individuals to avoid plastic. If you're interested in kind of finding out some of these ways, there's a lot of great zero waste blogs and zero waste living YouTube channels where you can get some really, really great tips. So a lot of us know about things like using a reusable shopping bag or using a reusable water bottle, but there's a lot of other steps you can take too. So for example, I use a shampoo bar and a conditioner bar, and I keep those in little aluminum tins in my shower so that I'm not using shampoo and conditioner in plastic bottles. I also use bar soap to wash my face instead of the liquid soap that comes in a plastic bottle. I have a bamboo toothbrush. I just buy them on Amazon. They cost the same as a regular plastic toothbrush, but when I throw it away, I know that it's going to break down. It's not going to be plastic that stays on the earth forever. Another great thing to do is shop in the bulk bins. So here in our local area, we have Fred Meyer and Winco and even Whole Foods that all have bulk bins. So you can take your own bags, you can take your own containers, and you can fill up with a lot of the essentials you would need to cook with, and that cuts down on a ton of food packaging.
That's neat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, and our final interviewee for a quick story.
It's very nice to meet you. My name is Mr. Ben, and I'll be here talking about surfing, the ocean, and pollution. So, one of the questions you had for me was what was it? What are the ways I've experienced pollution in the ocean? Is that right?
Oh, yeah, one of the ways pollution can come, pollution of single-use plastics can come back and bite us.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways, but I'll start with a personal experience and then we'll kind of go from there, if that's all right with you. Is that right? Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to go on a trip to Southeast Asia where I was motorcycling, surfing, and skateboarding a lot through down the coast. And I was surfing off of the coast over there in Vietnam, and while I was paddling, I thought my hand went into a jellyfish, which I was terrified because I didn't want to get it stung. I had no idea about the biodiversity over there. But when I lifted my hand up, it was just a plastic sack, which was actually even more gross than a jellyfish on my hand. And so many of the ways when you start looking at the single-use plastics and how they affect the overall oceans in general, and not just because it's kind of gross, because like it doesn't matter, I got out of the water and that was gone. But the jellyfish is something that is eaten by turtles and lots of other things. And as soon as a turtle starts to ingest those things, they'll either choke or it'll fill its stomach with plastics, and ultimately they die. Also, after a while, those single-use plastics like plastic bottles and plastic bags start to break down after about 40 or 50 years or so, which is already starting to happen. And those chemicals begin to leach into the oceans, where they're tracing those fats in a lot of our fish that ingest them. There are beaches that instead of sand, they're just like a bunch of broken down plastic as well, which is terrifying to think about, and how those things affect things that we swim in and we're in all the time. So the single-use plastics, amongst other things, make us sick when we go surf. You know, just for one day, if there's a lot of junk in the ocean, because ultimately, you know, water gets in your mouth, water gets in everywhere. So it's sick for us to experience, you know. In San Diego, for example, I have a lot of buddies that surf down there too. And when it's a heavy rainstorm and a lot of that rainwater flushes into the ocean, everybody stops. Even if it's a really great set, nobody goes out there because, well, some people do, and they always get sick. And you can get very, very sick from that. So from one day of surfing, if we can get really sick, if we think about the biodiversity of everything that's in there that is just always in the water, what are we doing to those things? There's also a thing called ghost fishing, where not just single-use plastics, I'm going a little off topic here, but those fish nets just kind of swim around and basically take down fish and other large creatures that get there. They get stuck and they slowly suffer a very slow death out in our oceans. So single-use plastics, I believe at this rate, there will be more single-use plastics in the ocean than there are fish by 2025. That makes it really, really gross. If you've ever been surfing before, or if you've ever been on a wave and you're coming down and you're dropping in, and then you see just plastic bottles and other disgusting poly-based sorts of things floating around you, it makes it really hard to enjoy the ocean and kind of makes you feel overall disgusted.
Any other questions? No, that was great.
Thank you very much. And thank you. Piscati.
In conclusion, single-use plastics poison animals, including us as humans. They also pollute the earth and never go away or biodegrade. The solution? Don't use these horrible products and save the earth. Thank you for joining us this week on JakeSlips TV, Environmental Justice Edition.